Good morning. It is Monday morning. My name is Vicky Idoko Pope. I am the CEO of VIPCG, and this is the WASH Academia series. The WASH Academia series is a program for developing the capacity of the WASH sector. Today, we will be discussing the challenges of corporatization. As you know, corporatization is an organizational transformation initiative. And we know also that the data is that about 50% of all organizational transformations fail. So we are going to be looking at the different challenges that come with corporatization and how we should address those challenges so that we can achieve success. Before we delve into the challenges of corporatization, let us look a little closely at what corporatization is and the benefits that we're hoping to get from corporatizing a state water utility. Corporatization, as it relates to a state water utility, is changing a government-owned organization to a commercial organization or corporate organization. And in this case, we're talking about your state water utility. So we're changing, say, the State Water Board to a water corporation in the hope that by doing that, we will be transforming a civil service organization to a corporation. Through corporatization, we conduct an organization diagnosis or even a sector-wide diagnosis for the state. And then we institute corporate governance, and we transform the leadership and management philosophy, the structure and processes. And then we do restructuring and re-engineering of the entire organization and its systems and processes. Then, of course, the final piece is we institute change management. And this comes in throughout from the design to the implementation. So in a nutshell, this is the process of corporatization. Corporatization has so many benefits, but the easiest way to look at it is to look at it from the perspectives of the key stakeholders. One of the key stakeholders, of course, is the customers. The customers need constant water supply. They need better quality water supply, and they need improved coverage. So by corporatizing the water utility, it is better able to produce more water, distribute more water, cover more areas, and supply good quality water to its customers. The second beneficiary, of course, is the government that has the primary responsibility of making sure that the general population have constant water supply that is of good quality. Well, the government also currently finances the entire corporation. So by corporatizing, we are able to improve coverage and supply, and at the same time financial viability is assured so that the government doesn't have to bear the burden of supporting, the financial burden of constantly supporting the water utility. The last group of beneficiaries, of course, is the staff, who no longer have to work under the civil service structure but now work for a corporation. The staff will gain by increased salary. That's the first thing. Increased benefits, such as car loans, housing loans, if all of that is written into the staff benefits. The staff can be directly rewarded for performance. They are placed in places where they are qualified for. So we have square pegs in square holes. These are some of the benefits of corporatization. There's so many more, but we'll stop here and look at the challenges. You know, corporatization is organizational transformation. The initiative itself, that is organizational transformation, are notorious for failures. In fact, as much as 50% organizational transformations fail. Well, what can we do to ensure that our corporatization effort achieves success? So we want to look at the key challenges, or so many of the challenges that confront corporatization, so that we can achieve success. The very first one that we want to look at is not having the appropriate governance in place. As we know, governance basically is what the board does, so the board of directors that we have should be a governance board, and it should comprise of different people with different skills from the various sectors that can affect the fate of the new corporation. The next thing that we want to look at is not having appropriate functional and organizational structure. A functional structure is the work structure of the organization, the different work groupings of work that has to be done. And then, of course, the organizational structure is the reporting structure, which is the people structure of the organization. The next challenge is the reengineering and a reengineering of the operational and managerial processes. The old, you have a new structure, you have a new operational structure, you have a new functional structure, and you have a new organogram. The actual work that has to be carried out, the way that the work is carried out, how the focus on performance and all of that will require re-engineering the operational processes of the state water utility of the new corporation. Also, the managerial processes have to be re-engineered. You have to look at the managerial philosophy and then change how management is done in the new corporation. The next one that we should be paying attention to is a strategic plan. The strategic plan that will be developed is not your traditional strategic plan. In fact, it's a future search plan. It is a future search plan that covers the first 3 years of the corporation, which is sometimes called the transition years, and then maybe the 2 years after the transition years, during when now you are consolidating and growing the operations of the new corporation. So we don't want to do the traditional strategic plan. We want a future search plan that is our strategy for approaching the future corporation. We also must have a business plan for the new organization. The future is supposed to be bright, but as we know, when you get into any kind of business, you need to have a plan. You have a plan about what the business model is going to be, how you are going to serve your customers, how you are going to generate revenue from the customers, which really is the crust of the matter for corporatization. So we develop a new business plan, and that helps us to advance into a future organization that we have designed. Well, when you have a business plan and now you are moving into running the corporation, we need a marketing plan, because up until now, we have a certain number of people that we are serving, or a certain number of households or establishments that we are serving, and we have an established relationship with our customers. In this case, the marketing plan will be how we can advance the services, how we can communicate the value that we bring to our customers, how we can communicate that we have an improved brand or a new brand for the water utilities, so that our relationship with our customers can be highly improved and beneficial in terms of revenue generation to the corporation and service delivery to the customers. We also need to have a financial management plan, because there is a need to ensure proper cash flow. And we also want to make sure that our finances are properly accounted for, and that we are able to manage the funds that come in such a way that if we need to reinvest where we need to reinvest that excess money that may be coming in and all of that. Because when you receive financial autonomy and you don't have a financial management plan in place, a lot of things can go badly, because then you have money coming in and you're not able to cover your expenses, which is what financial autonomy is going to require that you do. Then we're looking at a service transformation plan that you need to have. If you don't have a service transformation plan, you will go back to producing at the same, producing or performing at the same level that you were performing before you engaged in the transformation. So oftentimes most organizations engage in PIP or performance improvement initiatives or performance improvement plans. The issues that we have these days, however, is that most of those performance improvement initiatives fail to be sustainable. So you want to make sure that your service transformation plan is a transformation plan that can be sustained for the long haul and going into the future. We also want to have a comprehensive change management plan. Change management builds a bridge between the old civil service organization and this new commercial organization. It is that bridge that both the management and staff will use to traverse to the new corporation. So having a comprehensive change management plan is critical to the success of your corporation. So what should be in your change management plan? Well, one is stakeholder management. And stakeholder management involves stakeholder analysis, stakeholder engagement, and of course, implementation of whatever the engagement strategies that you have in your stakeholder management. Then the next one, of course, is the communication plan. Your communication plan, which is a part of your change management plan, involves how you will communicate the new organization and its functionings to all the different stakeholders and to the general public so that they can make decisions in favor of the corporatization effort. Then, of course, the last piece, the organization that existed before is not the same organization that is going to be existing after the transformation. So we need to have a comprehensive capacity building program, a training program, a very robust training program to quickly raise the capacity of staff from where they were before in the civil service organization to what a corporatized organization will be. So your change management plan covers stakeholder engagement, it covers communication, and capacity building. Those three key areas is what is contained in your change management plan. Then we want to also look at there's so many soft areas to corporatization that often leads to failure because they are not paid attention to. One is the entire nature of the change itself. The nature of corporatization is a transformation. One day you are like this, and then the next day you are here. So it's not an incremental change process. We often tend to think that because there's so much to do in moving the corporation from a water utility, a state-owned water utility that is a civil service organization, to a commercial organization, that we tend to think that is an incremental change, but in fact is an organizational transformational change. What that means is that within the 3 years that you would set aside in your implementation plan as the transition period, all the changes should happen in the first year. You must implement every change that you are thinking of implementing in the first year. In the second year is when you are now correcting whatever mistakes were made, deciding what to keep and what not to keep now that you are in the new organization, and what to augment and all of that. In the third year is when you consolidate all the changes. So the transition period of year 1, year 2, year 3 is a period where you do the massive change. Year 1, year 2, you make corrections and consolidate. Year 3, you complete the consolidation and move to full functioning in year 4 and 5. We have to be very, very wary of haphazard implementation. There is so much to do from infrastructural change to process change to people change to even organizational structural change, that we often would implement certain parts of the transformation, and it may look like we are doing the right thing, but we might leave some things undone. Haphazard implementation will lead to chaos. And when you have a chaotic implementation, we are going to end up having an abandoned process and a failed corporatization. The next thing that we want to look at is who should be in charge of implementation. This is a key area that often there is a debate. Most of the organizations that we have worked with will tend to say, okay, let senior management implement, or if it's a state water utility, let the supervising ministry take charge of implementation, or sometimes the government will actually set up a committee to handle the implementation. This is actually a wrong approach. You need to hand over the implementation of corporatization to a qualified technical change implementer. You may have a group of people or a team or a committee that these change experts report to, but under no circumstances should you have civil servants implementing a massive change effort like corporatization. Then we want to look at union management. See, union management is a critical aspect of change in that the union have a responsibility to make sure that their members have a job and that they are treated fairly and equitably. So the change effort itself must work to gain the trust of the unions, that their needs will be carried out and protected. The very first thing is that you must take steps to make sure that you don't have to fire anybody. Your state water utility, the employees of your state water utility are government employees. They are members of the civil service. So if there are any group of people that you do not need, just return them to the civil service pool, so that you are not having to worry about having to fire people and then get the union on your wrong side. But the very first step in union management is educating the union in their role, about their role in corporatization, so that they understand the benefits, what they are supposed to do to partner with management and the implementing technicians, as well as the supervising ministry, to ensure that the corporatization scales through. So if you train your union in what this thing is, what they should do in corporatization, they will go on and inform their members as to what this corporatization is, and then you will have less resistance. The other thing that I want to talk about is, of course, every change needs a champion. And corporatization is a major change that is in dire need of a champion. And sometimes we can have one champion. We assume that the governor is going to be the main champion, but that never works. So we need a change champion team that is comprised of people from the governor's office, from the supervising ministry, from the Ministry of Finance, from even the Attorney General's office to the general population. And sometimes you could have technicians from the cultural, the traditional rulers' office and all of that. Why we need that is because this is the only way we're going to gain the trust of the general public, as well as have access to making resources available to the new corporation. So we also want to look at a critical risk, because corporatization is such a difficult thing to do that sometimes you have the risk of abandonment. Abandoning the entire initiative is always there. The harder it gets, the more complicated it seems to get. The slightest chance of failure, like a drop in service delivery, everybody might be ready to just drop the ball. and say this thing is not working. So you have to keep an eye on that the corporatization itself is moving on according to the implementation plan, and that you're achieving the results that you have planned in the implementation plan so that you don't abandon the process. Bear in mind that performance will worsen when you start implementing. That means maybe the actual quantity of water supply, maybe the actual number of people you are covering, maybe even the quality of water supply. The staff might feel like, okay, we're now anxious about money because now we can't rely on our civil service pay. Staff that you desperately need in the new corporation might decide they don't want to go with you to the new corporation and would rather go to the civil service. All of this can contribute to a worsening performance for the new corporation. But I have good news. The good news is that this is usually temporary. The dip will go back up. The dip in performance will go back up as soon as you start the consolidation process and you start addressing the fallout from all the various changes that you are implementing. One of the big things that most investors in corporatization worry about is political will. Political will basically means, will the executives stick with this thing to the end? The executive don't have a need to corporatize so that they can have the financial benefits of reducing the financial burden. They also have a need to make sure that the general population gets more water and there's more people in the grid that are connected to the grid and that are getting more steady water supply and good quality water supply. But corporatization can look so chaotic for the first 3 years that the government might lose the guts to continue and bring this to a completion. And sometimes the people might start saying things like, oh, they sold the water board, or this is a whole ploy to get more money and they're stealing money and all of that. But the government needs the people to have a positive image of itself, because when it's time for voting, guess who votes? The people. So the government wants to stay on the right side of the people often. And then the government has to also even come up sometimes with extra money to go through that transition period for the corporation. So a lot of times you would see the energy level of the government going down. And when that happens, you got a problem. So again, this we address from that stakeholder management that we talked about under the change management. Then, of course, we have issues with change in government. Remember, based on what we were saying, you have a period once you've gone through the designs and all of that, and you go into implementation. You have a 3-year period that is the transition period. When year 1, you implement, year 2, you're addressing all the issues that come out of it, and then year 3, you're consolidating so you can move to year 4 and year 5 in terms of the upward arrow in performance. But what tends to happen though is that we have a 4-year period in government turnovers in our democracy, in most democracies around the world, in fact. So when the transformation straddles 2 governments, the incoming government may not understand the motivation of the outgoing government and might in fact decide, why are we changing the water board into a corporation, and might reverse all the work that has been done. What has to happen? This again underscores the reason why we want to implement heavily in year 1 of the implementation period. But more importantly, we want to make sure that things like the water law is in place, because the new government would have to come in and change the water law in order to change the state of the corporation that you now have running. Well, the customer base, we want them to relate to the new corporation in a way that benefits the new corporation. And specifically when we are supplying more water and service is a whole lot more steady, what we need from the customer is to pay. Well, the customer, is coming up onto corporatization with a reduced level of trust in terms of service delivery from the water board. So to gain the trust of the customer, we must first of all be sure that we supply water constantly and that the quality is good and that we are constantly engaged with the customer. I know that the Abuja State, the Abuja Water Authority, they have teams that are so closely related. Their field officers are so close to their customers that if there's ever going to be a break in transmission, they will try to let you know ahead of time when that happens. Or if there is some break of a water mains, they would get to you and tell you what they're doing to fix it. The main thing here is to gain the trust of your customers, that you are focused on delivering service to them. Then, of course, I told you there's a whole lot of this, so stick with me. Then, of course, the staff that you need in the corporation. If we had qualified staff in the corporation in the first place, if we had enough of those, we might have had less problem. See, when we corporatize very soon and based on our strategic plans and our business plans, we will see very quickly that we don't have the right number of staff and we don't have the right kind of staff to power the new corporation. And no matter how much we train, that the pipeline is still lean. So how do we fill the pipeline to get the staff that we need, the personnel that we need for the new corporation to function? One of those is through training, but we have to quickly fill the pipeline from the grounds up and begin the training of those, whether it's taking in youth corpers or new graduates who are in the field or in related fields of water supply. Again, how robust our training program is going to determine whether or not we will be able to meet the staffing needs of the new corporation. The water schemes that we have from the old water board often is not enough for whatever we have written down in our strategic plan. So in order to be able to implement the strategic plan and the business plan, we're going to need to revamp the water schemes. What we have seen is that a lot of the reforms first focus on infrastructural rehabilitation. And so by the time you're bringing in corporatization, much of the infrastructure has been put in place. But what often is lacking is the water mains, the distribution pipelines through the various coverage areas that will allow for access and connectivity to the grid. And so what tends to happen is that you now have rehabilitated schemes, but you do not have the pipelines that will bring the water to the people. So make sure that your plans on corporatization includes provisions for rehabilitation of the main pipelines that will convey the water to the people. The next thing that we want to look at, there's so much, is the security of the new corporation's asset. Though the new corporation would have the big, sometimes have a big headquarters that is, that's staffed with or equipped with computers and all the new gadgets and all of that you have, well, you have that, and then you have the pipelines, and then you have the rehabilitator schemes, and maybe even power infrastructure if you are using solar powers and so on. All of this used to be secured by the existing security apparatus, which is usually a security unit or department within the old water board. And these security people are, in fact, civil servants. Most of them are just regular people that are unqualified. So to make space in the staffing structure so that we can get more people in, more qualified people in. It is better to actually outsource your security. That way you can secure all the assets of the corporation, because once corporatization is in place, we don't want situations where we have missing parts, or if there's going to be sabotage with someone operating some pipelines. And well, the next thing that we want to look at is that but through corporatization, we're changing the civil service culture for a corporate culture. Culture change is very difficult. It's looking at how you can get a group of people to begin to think in terms of what is important. The key area that we know for sure is a customer focus. The civil servants tend to run bureaucracies, but the corporation must change its focus to delivering services to its customers. So culture change is embedded in the way that the corporation communicates. It's embedded in the length of time, in the amount of time it takes to make decisions and to carry out actions and all of that. So there is the need to focus, to have a proper culture change plan so that you can carry out your activities with a lot more speed and be able to be responsive to your customers. The last thing that we want to talk about is the sectoral corruption that exists. We know that the sector itself, the water sector, has corruption in it. We're not able to account for all the revenue that we are receiving from our customers, and this has the direct impact of strangling the corporation financially. So we cannot carry this from the old corporation to the new corporation. To address issues of inflation of costs, fraud in collections, and all of that, my advice generally is to corporatize. I mean, once you corporatize, is to automate everything. Computerize everything that you can computerize. Put in a new financial management system, a new human resource management system. Let your customers pay to the banks or through apps, and we have a whole lot of those now. Make sure your procurement unit is fully engaged in surveying the market for whatever is the appropriate cost for parts and services that you need, so that we can introduce all levels of cost efficiencies. So your supply chain management should be computerized. There's so much you can do with the computers. So your plan for ICT integration will help you with corruption, efficiencies, and effectiveness in the use of finances. We have looked at so many challenges that can impede the success of corporatization. This is not intended to scare you from doing corporatization. It is just intended to bring these issues to light so you can pay attention to it as you go from the actual design to implementation of your corporatization initiatives. Listen to this video over and over again so that when the issues come out, you will be able to deal with them as they should. And then we can all have successful corporatized entities in the water sector. Again, my name is Vicky Idoko Pope. I am the CEO of VIPCG, and this has been a WASH Academia series. Thank you for watching.